Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now we have gathered here today for a very important purpose and for a very important reason. And we have gathered for a reason or for a purpose which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in various places in the Holy Quran, and which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has mentioned in various ahadith. And this reason or this purpose which we have gathered for, not only there are many virtues regarding this purpose or this reason, but also at the same time there are many ahadith which talks about the severity of neglecting this. And the reason why we have gathered here today, the purpose for our gathering today, is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described with the words tazkiyah, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has used the word ihsan to describe our gathering in this particular house, i.e. for the spiritual rectification of our heart and for the spiritual reformation of our heart. The word used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the word tazkiyah, and the word used by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the word ihsan. Now, as I was saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many places has used the word tazkiyah. In particular in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates the story of Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sayyiduna Ismail alayhi salam when they constructed the Kaaba and the building of the Baytullah. Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, they made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They firstly prayed to Allah, Rabbana taqabbal minna, O Allah, accept what we have done. I accept the building of the Baytullah, accept the building of the Ka'batullah. Thereafter, Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Rabbana wab'ath fihim rasulam minhum. O Allah, send a person, a rasul, a messenger, fihim, from the people of Makkah, from the Quraysh, from the dwellers of Makkah, yatlu alayhim ayatik, and this person would recite your verses, wa yu'allimuhumul kitab, this person would teach the kitab, wal hikmah, and wisdom. And lastly, Allah, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam made the dua, wa yuzakkihim, and that this person and this messenger and this rasul, he would purify them. So four things Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, four responsibilities of this Rasul and this Nabi and this messenger, i.e. Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the four things are: number one, he would recite the book, he would teach the book, wal hikmah, he will also pass wisdom and hikmah, and number four, he would purify the souls, he would purify the hearts and the ruh and the nafs of all his followers, i.e. the Muslims who follow in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who believe in Allah and who believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is the dua made by Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the prophetic commands, i.e. tazkiyah and purification of the heart and purification of the soul. And this particular word tazkiyah, wa yuzakkihim, is not just mentioned in Surah Baqarah, but many other places in the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala touches on this topic of purification and spiritual rectification. As I was saying, that in the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has used the word ihsan to describe spiritual rectification, has described the word ihsan for islah and for the rectification of the heart and for the soul. And the very famous hadith, which can be found in Sahih Muslim, It's a long hadith, but this is a hadith I'm sure many brothers have heard before. It's known as Hadith Jibra'il. And the reason why this hadith is known as Hadith Jibra'il is because Sayyiduna Jibra'il alayhi salam, in the form of a person, came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked various questions about deen and about the religion. And the first question Sayyiduna Jibra'il alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was فَأَخْبِرْنِي anil Islam, inform me, tell me about Islam. Now what does Islam mean? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied that Islam means an tashhada Allah ilaha illallah, to testify that there is no God besides Allah, to testify that Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah's Rasul and Allah's messenger. Then Sayyidina Jibril alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that فَأَخْبِرْنِي anil iman, tell me, inform me about iman. What does iman mean? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied that iman is to believe in Allah, to believe in the angels, to believe in the books, to believe in the last day, وَتُؤْمِنَ بِالْقَدْرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ, and to believe in fate, to believe in taqdeer, the good and the bad. So you have Islam, which means verbal belief in Allah, and also actions such as prayer, zakat, hajj. And then you have Iman, which is basically got to do with the tenets of Islam, i.e. believing in Allah, in the messengers, to believe in the previous books, to believe in the Holy Quran, to believe in angels, Iman bil Ghaib, which we call things which we haven't seen with our own eyes. We believe in it, we believe in fate, we believe in taqdeer, the good and the bad. The good thing which happens to us, we believe that it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The bad thing which happens to us, bereavement in the family, we lose our money, we lose our house, we lose our business, all these things are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So two things, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and two answers. One is got to do with Islam, which is got to do with actions, and then you've got Iman, which is got to do with faith, which is got to do with belief and the basic tenets of Islam. Then the third question Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was فَأَخْبِرْنِي anil ihsan, that tell me, inform me, explain to me, what does ihsan mean? Now ihsan literally means to do things in a good way, to do things in an efficient way. And Islamically speaking, or when it comes to tazkiyah, the explanation of ihsan is to believe or to worship and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah, is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a way that ka'annaka tarah, as you are, or that you can see Him. That when you are praying salah, when you are praying your fajr, when you are praying your dhuhr, when you are praying your sunans before and after, when you are praying your nafals before and after, then whatever worship and ibadah you do, whether it's got to do with salah, whether it's zakat, whether it's fasting, whether it's hajj, whether you're giving sadaqah, charity, whether you're doing qurbani, udhiyah, akika, whatever ibadat or worship it is, you do it as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching over you. I.e., you have this aura, you have this feeling that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always looking at me. And that in a nutshell is tazkiyah. It builds the quality in your heart where you gain the sifat of taqwa in your heart. And taqwa, what does taqwa mean? Taqwa means that you have this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. And when we develop this quality, and when we develop this consciousness that Allah is always watching us, Allah is always looking at us, then I can guarantee you all the sins which we are doing, all the bad things which we are doing, it will automatically stop. Because when you look at it, most of the time when we commit sins, it's because we don't have that feeling that Allah is watching us. So we'll do something bad, we'll steal, we'll thieve, we'll gamble, we'll commit adultery, we'll do this, we'll do that. Why? Because we think to ourselves, oh well, no one is watching us. Like obviously we don't actually say intentionally Allah isn't watching us, but we'll say, oh well, no one is looking, I'm just entering the bookmakers, or no one knows I've got this girlfriend, no one knows I'm having this premarital relationship with this woman, no one knows, my wife doesn't know that I've got this woman on the side. Because you think like that, that no one knows. My wife doesn't know, my children doesn't know, my friends do not know, my associates do not know, and we don't have this feeling that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, because we don't believe in that, or we don't actually feel like that, then what happens? We are involved in sins. We are involved in gunas. But what happens when you do the dhikr, when you are in the path of suluk, when you are in the path of tazkiyah and tasawwuf, is that you develop the quality of ihsan in your heart, where you have this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around you. You will do things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills you to do, wants you to do. When you talk, you're not going to be backbiting about anyone. You're not going to be slandering about anyone. Why? Because slandering, backbiting, you know that if I was to speak it, then I'll be punished in the hereafter. So what then happens? You then refrain from backbiting. You then refrain from slandering. You're not going to be meeting any unlawful women. You're not going to be meeting girls who you are not supposed to meet. Why? Because you know that you'll be punished in the hereafter. So this is what tazkiyah and purification of the soul, purification of the heart is. It is to develop the quality of ihsan in our heart. It's to develop this awareness, this kind of consciousness, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever we do, we're doing it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. When we are worshipping Him, we concentrate solely and exclusively to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mukhlisina lahuddin, as mentioned in another verse of the Holy Quran, that we do things with the true intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what tazkiyah and purification of the soul, purification of the heart is about. Now, as I was saying, that tazkiyah, or the word ihsan, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has used, or spiritual purification or rectification, or sometimes the word al-islah is used. These words or these concepts, they've got only one intention. There's only one purpose, and that is that it concentrates on the heart. Islah, tazkiyah, tasawwuf, ihsan, it's only concentrating on one thing, and that is the spiritual heart, the qalb which is inside us. Other kind of things which we do may be concentrating on your brains, it may be concentrating on your stomach, on your arms, but spiritual rectification, tazkiyah, tasawwuf, suluk, whatever you want to call it, it just concentrates on the spiritual heart, the qalb which is inside us. And why does it concentrate only on the qalb and the spiritual heart? Is because there are also many ahadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has stressed the importance of rectifying your heart. The very famous hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that there is an organ in your body, there is a flesh in your body, that if it is rectified, your entire body is rectified. However, if this flesh or this organ in your body, if it is not rectified, i.e. if you don't take care of it, if you don't nourish it in a halal and in a lawful way, then your entire body becomes mashed, as we say, your entire body becomes bad, your entire body becomes worse. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then says, Ala wahiyal qalb, that beware, this organ which we are talking about is the heart and is the spiritual qalb, i.e. the heart which is inside our body. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us to rectify it, to do islah of it, to spiritually reform it. Otherwise, if we don't, and we let these vile characteristics develop in our hearts about greed, hasad, jealousy and so on, then it kind of will mess all our body up, will mess the rest of the organs up. However, if we can rectify the heart, if we can spiritually reform the heart, then everything will be good. When we meet people, there will be like a good there'll be this kind of like a nice attitude. You know, people would be pleased to look at us, people will be pleased to listen to us, people will be pleased to talk to us. So it will then have a positive effect on the people around. And this is not the only hadith about spiritually rectifying your heart and the qalb. There is also another hadith which can be found in Musnad Ahmad, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam again has mentioned the importance of the heart and the qalb. And sometimes what happens is that many of us think that it's only through like praying a lot of nafil prayers or tahajjud and giving a lot of sadaqah and charity that we can only be entered into Jannah by doing these kind of things. However, something simple as having a pure heart can also lead a person to Jannah and paradise as well. And this can be seen from this hadith of Musnad Ahmad, that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with a group of Sahabas and companions. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Sahabas and companions that a person from Jannah, an inhabitant from paradise, will appear before you. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this for 3 consecutive days. That a person from Jannah will appear in front of you, or a person from the inhabitants of Jannah will come before you. And he said it for 3 consecutive days. And on all those 3 occasions, Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu appeared in front of the Sahabas and the companions. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying to the companions that Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu, he's a Jannati and he's a dweller of Jannah and paradise. Now one of the companion, one of the Sahaba who was there with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he then went to meet Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu, and he said to him that, can I come and stay in your house? I want to observe what you do. So then Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu said, okay, you can come and see what I do. So that Sahabi, that companion, he went to Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu's house and he stayed the night there. But throughout the night he didn't see Hazrat Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu doing any kind of extraordinary or amazing a'mal or action where you can say and pinpoint that yes, this is what is taking you to Jannah and paradise. Don't get me wrong, Hazrat Sa'd bin Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu, he would do his tahajjud and the other a'mal, but that Sahabi didn't see anything amazing where you can say, yo, this is taking you to Jannah and paradise. So at the end, that Sahabi approached Hazrat Sa'd bin Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu and said to him that, look, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that you're a Jannati, you're a person of Jannah, you're an inhabitant of Jannah. But I've spent the night with you and I haven't actually seen anything where I can say that this is taking you to Jannah, this is taking you to paradise. Then Hazrat Sa'd bin Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu replied by saying, well, I'm not hiding anything. What you have seen is who I am. I'm not actually hiding anything. This is what I do normally. I pray my tahajjud, I do my tasbihat, I don't do anything extra, but this is what I do. But then Hazrat Sa'd bin Waqqas anhu then said to this companion, however, there is one thing which I do, and that is when I sleep at night time, when I retire to my bed, I retire without having a grudge against another Muslim brother. So then that Sahabi said that this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant. This is what has made you reach the maqam which you have reached, i.e. Jannah and paradise. I.e. he would sleep, when he would rest at night time, when he would go to bed, he would go to bed having a pure heart. Not having a grudge against anyone, not having envy against anyone, not having jealousy or hasad against anyone. That is the reason why Hazrat Sa'd bin Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu, one of the reasons, shall we say, that Sa'd bin Waqqas radhiyallahu anhu would enter Jannah and would enter paradise. Not having a grudge against another Muslim brother or another Muslim sister. Similarly, in another hadith of Sunan ibn Majah, that once again the Sahabas, one of the Sahabis asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that who is the best amongst us? That from amongst us, who is the best? So all these Sahabas, all the companions were thinking that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would probably say Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu, Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu, Hazrat Uthman radhiyallahu anhu, Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhu. But instead Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave a generic rule and he said, the best amongst you are those who's got a truthful tongue, i.e. doesn't lie, and he's got a sound heart. So then the Sahabas, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that what do you mean by a sound heart? So again Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied that a sound heart is a heart where there is no envy, no kind of jealousy, no kind of rancor or anything like that. That a pure heart, a sound heart, that person who possesses that, that person who has that, he's the best amongst everyone. So this is what tazkiyah is. If you when you look at tazkiyah, purification of the heart, it teaches us that we shouldn't have any kind of hatred for another Muslim brother. It takes away the maladies and the vile characteristics of the heart, where we don't hold a grudge against another person. Even if somebody did something against us, we will forgive that person and we will move on. And this is what tazkiyah is. And if we can actually rectify our heart, we're more or less there to Jannah and paradise. That's why we are in this world and this dunya, is to do our amals, is to strive so that we can enter Jannah and paradise. That's why we are here for. So if we can do something, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's something which is very simple. The tazkiyah line is, you don't have to pray 100 rakats a day, you don't have to pray 200 rakats a day. It's something which is very simple, the ilaj, the medication, in terms of the regular dhikr which we do, in terms of the spiritual rectification. And then when we do that and we can cleanse and purify our heart, it then becomes easy for us to enter Jannah. It then becomes easy for us to then start doing other kind of ibadats and worships which are linked with tazkiyah and purification. Now our Khalifa Sahib will mention the method of zikr later, but just for the new satis and for the new brothers, the silsila which we follow is called the Naqshbandiya Uwaisiya silsila, and this silsila takes its barakah, or you could say the teachings, from Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimullah, who received the barakah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without actually seeing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are also taking the barakah and blessings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without actually seeing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the dhikr which we do. Now let's look at Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimullah. Now Uwais Qarni rahimullah, he was a tabi, and it's mentioned a hadith of Sahih Muslim that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu. Now let's look at Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu. Now Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu, he's such a person who shaitan would be scared of. Such a person that various ayats of the Holy Quran were revealed according to Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu's wishes. As mentioned in a hadith of Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if a Nabi or a Prophet was to come after me, lakana Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, that person would be Sayyidina Umar radhiyallahu anhu. Now Sayyidina Umar radhiyallahu anhu, such a great maqam, such a great status and rank, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu that after I pass away, a person will come whose name would be Uwais Qarni. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu, seek istighfar. Tell Uwais Qarni rahimahullah to do istighfar on your behalf. Subhanallah. Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu, Rasulullah telling Hazrat Uwais Qarni, you ask or request Uwais Qarni to do istighfar for you, i.e. that any of your shortcomings, say to Uwais Qarni that you pray to Allah for any of Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu's shortcomings. This was the rank of Uwais Qarni rahimahullah. And I'll just mention another point here which is not actually linked with the tazkiyah, but something which is very, very important, that sometimes we do certain things with the intention of fi sabilillah, with the intention of, because it's in the path of Allah, we'll go for da'wah, we'll do this, we'll do that. And we don't actually ask our parents. We don't even take any permission from our parents. We just go there for studying, go to another country, go to another city. We'll go somewhere for da'wah. We don't actually get the barakah or the blessings from our parents. But let's look at Uwais Qarni rahimahullah. He lived in a place in Yemen. He lived in a time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive. Now he sent a message to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, O Prophet of Allah, I want to come and meet you. but I've got an ill and a sick mother. So what should I do? If I leave you, if I leave my mother and I come and see you, it could be so that no one will look after my mother. My mother might pass away. But at the same time, if I look after my mother, I won't be able to see you. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimahullah that don't come and see me. You look after your mother. That is more important and that is more rewardable. Look at Uwais Qarni rahimahullah. He gave up the honor of being a Sahabi. For who? For his mother, so that he can look after his sick mother. Imagine that. Like sometimes we want to go somewhere to study or want to go somewhere, but then we got parents who are very, very weak, who are very, very old at home, and we said, no, we want to go to that person to study, and then we sacrifice our parents. Look what Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimahullah sacrificed. He sacrificed the status of being a Sahabi. And what's the fazilat of a Sahabi? What's the virtue of a Sahabi? Radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. Allah is pleased with him. As mentioned in another hadith, that whoever has seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the fire would not touch that person. So Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimahullah, he sacrificed the honor of being a Sahabi and companion. Why? So that he can look after his ill and his sick mother. So as I was saying, that the barakah which we take is from Hazrat Uwais Qarni rahimahullah, who did not see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but his rank and his status, the barakah which he attained from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was of another level, to the extent that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Hazrat Umar radhiyallahu anhu that you go to Uwais Qarni rahimahullah and say to Uwais Qarni rahimahullah to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for any of your shortcomings. Now there are many reasons why the path of suluk and the path of tazkiyah is important. And as I kind of mentioned, that one of the reasons is that it purifies our heart and it takes away what we call vile characteristics of the heart. Now sometimes what happens is that we live in such a time where certain things kind of is getting implanted in our hearts. And we don't realize, but these things, these maladies or vile characteristics which we call it, is so severe and so bad that it has an effect on our iman and it has an effect on our deen. Take an example of hasad, i.e. jealousy and hatred. Now these things, because of the dunya, the society, the zamana which we are living in, we just naturally just get jealous of another brother, we get jealous of another Muslim sister, we have hatred for another Muslim brother. And as mentioned in the hadith of Sunan al-Bayhaqi, that these hatred, these jealousy, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has described them to be al-halika, shaving, i.e. it shaves a person's iman. It doesn't shave off the hair of your body, it doesn't shave off your heart, but it's going to be shaving off your iman slowly, slowly. And this is what these things are doing to us and to the Muslims in general, that having hatred for another Muslim brother, jealousy for another Muslim brother, it's taking or it's losing our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Other things such as riya, show offing, like doing things with the intention to please someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is considered to be the most dangerous of all the vile characteristics. Because when you start doing things for someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it then becomes shirk. And remember the punishment of shirk. Allah says in the Quran, Inna Allah la yaghfiru ay yushraka bih. Allah will never ever forgive shirk. Other sins, like for example, you kill someone. You say you kill another Muslim brother, intentionally even. But if afterwards you do tawbah and you repent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. You commit adultery, you gamble, you do this, you do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. However, shirk or ascribing partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something so dangerous that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forgive you. And it's mentioned in the hadith that if someone did various ibadats or worship for someone other than Allah, then in the day of judgment, Allah will say to that person that don't come to me for its reward, go to that person who you prayed for. See whether he can give you reward or not. And because that person would not be able to give you any reward and thawab, it will then mean that you are doomed and you are now destined to go to the fire of hell. Because sometimes it happens that we give some money to charity, but our intention is not to please Allah, it's to please that person so that he can then say to us that, oh, wow, this person is so rich and so loaded and so on. That's sometimes our intention is. So if we do various ibadats, whether it's sadaqah, whether it's charity, whether it's ibadat, not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but for someone else, then, in the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not reward you. So these, the zikr which we do, the tazkiyah and the purification of the heart, the main idea is to get rid of these vile characteristics of the heart. Touching on the shirk issue again, that there are certain things which we do these things, it actually amounts to shirk, but we don't even realize it's shirk. I mentioned this before as well early on, that there may be certain beliefs which we may have, like we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the all-powerful, having knowledge of the unseen. Now if we, na'udhu say that our imam or our sheikh or our pir has knowledge of the unseen, then that also amounts to shirk as well. Because remember, our belief is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's one, so believe in the oneness of Allah, but also we believe that all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes are exclusive for him. It doesn't pass on to anyone else. So if you believe that a human being has knowledge of the unseen, or a human being can do this or can do that or can do something extraordinary or amazing, something which only Allah can do but you believe a human being can do, then that will also amount to shirk as well. That will also amount to ascribing partners with Allah. So this is something which is very, very important. The tazkiyah, the purification, it takes the maladies from our heart. It takes away the riyah. It takes away the hatred and the hasad which we have for other Muslim brothers and for other Muslim sisters. Now before I finish, just a couple of points to mention. In the past, when it comes to suluk or tazkiyah, people will say, well, where does it say in the Quran? Where does it say in the hadith? Did the sahabas, did the companions do tazkiyah? Did the companions do suluk? Now, one thing to remind everyone is that sometimes we need to wake up and smell the coffee. Why do we always compare this zamana, this time, with the sahabas and the companions' time? The companions' time, as mentioned in the hadith, is khairul qurun, the best of all times. And the time which we are living now, you can't even call it sharrul qurun, you probably have to call it asharrul qurun, the worst of all times. It always happens, people say, oh well, sahabas didn't do it. You need to realize sahabas were in a different era. They lived in an era, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, khairul quruni qarni, thumma allazina yalunam, thumma allazina yalunahum. It's the best of all eras. But the time which we are living in, it's the worst of all time, asharrul qurun. So the sahabas, what I'm trying to imply is there was no need for tazkiyah of the sahabas. There was no need for spiritual rectification of the sahabas and the companions. A sahabi or a person, when he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that was it. He was now spiritually rectified. His islah had already been done by staying in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By being in the company and the suhbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then there was no need for any spiritual rectification of the sahabi and the companion. But for us, we're living 1500 years after the sahabas, and with no connection, our things, the things which we do, right? If you want to compare yourself with the sahabas, then at least live like a sahabi. We don't even live like a sahabi in the first place. So how can we compare ourselves with the sahaba and the companions and say, well, the sahabas didn't do it, then why are we doing it? There was no need for the sahabas and the companions to do it. But for us, there is a need for us to do it. And this exactly same argument you could have with people who don't believe in imams, and they say, oh well, why do you have to believe in Imam Abu Hanifa or listen to his opinion? Why don't we just take it directly from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we assume ourselves to be a sahabi, and we can give the Quran explanation and the hadith explanation? Because there's a 1500 year gap. how can you compare yourself to be a Sahabian companion in terms of their knowledge when it comes to Quran and Hadith? So exactly here as well, when it comes to purification and spiritual rectification, that there was no need for the Sahabas and the companions to do tazkiyah, to do zikr, to cleanse and purify the heart, because alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, all the Sahabas, they didn't have any hatred for another Muslim brother or for another Sahabi. I mentioned this before last week about adabs of ikhtilaf. And I mentioned that what unfortunately happens with us is that whenever there's a difference of opinion within a group or within a jamaat, then we just say to that person, oh, falaysa minna, he's not from us. He's got another ideology, he's different. And I mentioned that the Sahabas and the companions, they had many, many ikhtilafs. Hazrat Aisha anha would differ with Hazrat Umar anhu, Hazrat Umar anhu would differ with Hazrat Abu Bakr anhu, Hazrat Abu Bakr anhu would differ with Hazrat Uthman anhu. But none of the Sahabas had any hatred for the other Sahabi. Why? Because he had a difference of opinion. So as I was saying, that the Sahabi, they didn't have any hatred or jealousy for another Muslim brother, and another Sahabi, for another companion. But unfortunately, we have, our heart is full of these maladies, full of these hatred, full of show-offing, full of these kind of things. So it becomes utmost important for us to stay in the path of suluk and to purify and to rectify our hearts. I'll finish off with a very famous hadith of Sahih Muslim, and also the interpretation of this hadith. This hadith of Sahih Muslim narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not look at your beauty, He does not look at your face. In the hereafter, Allah will not look at your beauty, how beautiful you were, and beauty and looks and being well dressed. That is not a prerequisite for you to enter Jannah and paradise. But what will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look at? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look at your a'mals, your actions, and He will look at your hearts. And from this particular hadith, a great mufassir in the name of Imam Qurtubi rahmatullah alayhi has said that we should never judge people according to their actions. What Imam Qurtubi rahmatullah is trying to say is that if you see someone doing something distasteful, or you see someone doing something a bit weird or strange, you shouldn't then look down upon that person. Why? Because how do you know that in his heart there's khulusiyat there, there's sincerity there, there's piety there, and because of the piety and the sincerity, that will grant him Jannah and paradise. And also at the same time, if you see someone doing good, you see someone praying namaz, you see someone reading Quran, you see someone giving a lecture, don't judge him on his actions. Because how do you know in his heart he may be doing it for someone else, that he's doing it for faith. He's giving a lecture or a bayan so that people could say, mashallah, Mufti Sahib is very clever, mashallah, Mufti Sahib is a good speaker. How do you know he may be doing it for that reason? You see someone praying salah, how do you know that even though he's praying salah, how do you know in his heart he's probably doing it for the intention to please someone else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So that's why Imam Qurtubi rahmatullah alayhi said that do not judge people on their actions all the time. If they're doing something good, that don't mean they're now the saint of Allah, because you don't know what's in their heart. But also at the same time, obviously if you see someone doing something bad, then that's different. But if you see someone doing something a bit strange, or you think, oh, this is not right, what's he doing? But then don't be quick to judge him and say that he's doing something a bit dodgy or a bit kind of overt here, because you don't know what's he doing it or what his intention is in the heart. And that is, in a nutshell, the whole talk or the whole topic or the whole purpose of our coming here today is to focus on the heart and is to spiritually rectify our heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to act on what's been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.